All right, peace, y'all. Welcome to Piper Carter Podcast. Oh no, this one is Beyond Breaking Barriers. Sorry, I've been on a retreat this weekend. Um, if y'all can hear me, just so I can double check because I couldn't hear the music. Can y'all hear me? If you can hear me, please say so in the chat. Let me see. Oh, okay. Peace, peace, peace. Yes. So that intro is from a music producer, and her name is Rated M. She made that beat. The beat is an original beat that she made. She didn't make it for me, but she did make it like, and I asked her, I was like, hey, can I use that beat for my show? And she was like, yeah. So I'm just very excited. So shouts out to Rated M, shouts out to everyone in the chat. I hope everyone had a great weekend. I had a very interesting weekend. I what's interesting is, so I do a lot of things, and one of the things that I do, I've got these certifications in like conflict resolution training and like peace circles and all this kind of stuff. So I was hired by an organization here to go to their retreat and train their farmers um, in a conflict resolution strategy that they could use, among themselves. And oh man, it was such a beautiful place where we were. Like the nature was very beautiful. It was like this amazing house, like beautiful home, huge, tall ceilings, like for a loft, right on the lake. I mean, in the woods, just perfect. I love nature, so it was like just perfect. And something that kind of sucks is like it was in the middle of Trump country. And don't get me wrong, like no country is Trump's country. Like we know that nature is ours and it belongs to us and like all that kind of thing. But let's just say it's a lot of people who's been support on the right, far right. It's like all live like around there. And it just reminds me of the ways in which Black people um have less access to like nature, like undisturbed nature and, peace and just being able to be. What was beautiful is we were able to be there, and it's like right on the lake, so we were able to like have this very exclusive sort of experience that I thought was amazing. um but it just kind of reminded me of that, like we really need to have more spaces where we have access to nature, you know what I mean, like undisturbed nature, undeveloped nature. um so shouts out to a lot of like Black outdoors and Afro outdoor and Black to the Land Coalition and all these different people that do that work to like make sure that we have access to our foodways, our original foodways of like, you know, living off the land and, protecting our waterways, our air, any hooty rooty tooty. That's what that reminded me of. I do want to shout out some folks that are in the chat. Shouts out to I think I saw Jared Ball in the chat. I think I see Brother Afron, Jamon, Leah Boggs, Rouse Pasta Sauce, Maggie. And how y'all feeling? Put how you're feeling in the chat. It's been an interesting week. We're in the middle of the month. It's an eclipse. It's a lot going on. Tell me how y'all are feeling. Like, are folks feeling ready for spring to start. We're still in winter. Yeah, like where are y'all? What's going on with y'all? So let's see. I like to have interaction with the chat. You're tired. So a lot of people are saying they're tired. I see different people saying they're tired. So let me make sure that I give y'all some some uplifting energy. If tired is the way that we're feeling, I don't want folks feeling overwhelmed. Yeah. So the weather slapped y'all in Kansas City. Um so so some folks are feeling cold. Like, okay, so here in Michigan it was warm. We got some unseasonably warm days, and then like just like that it started snowing. And when I went outside I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting, because I was, thinking that maybe it was going to get like a little bit warmer and we're going to start to see, some of that type of weather, but we're not. We're we're seeing some more snow. So I guess, did the groundhog see his shadow? I don't know. I think he did on February 2nd. Well, something I want to get into. That's probably not the best segue, but I'm just going to segue into it. So, I think over the past, what is it, like several months that I've been doing this, I've been digging in here and reading these different articles. And one of the articles, there's I want to call it maybe like a handbook. Well, first, let me say this. So, within the context of like hip hop studies, there are several people who have created what I would call like these like handbooks. They're probably not handbooks. I'm calling it a handbook. But what I mean by that is, you know, some people have created, I would say, like a framework for having an understanding about, different excuse me, uh um aspects of hip hop. So there's the uh you know like activism sort of lane, where it's like, hip hop is, where, I know Jared Ball always says, that hip hop is not this radical thing. But there are folks who would say that hip hop is a vehicle for practicing, radical change, or practicing, or for experience, or yeah, for experiencing radical practices for change, right? Um, there's folks who use hip hop in the political sphere. We talked with Dr. Dia, that's doing great work down there in Alabama in her community. If you want to go check out that episode where we got to learn about the work that she's doing with youth and community to use hip hop to shape the actual electoral landscape in her community, and the material needs of people on the ground, and for literacy, in that way. um and then there is this sort of aspect of, I would say, like hip hop education. Like we got a chance to interview Martha Diaz, who, I mean, Jared Ball will know better than me, but for me, she's one of the, I would say, pioneers of hip hop education and archiving, and us having access to our own archives that we control, teaching folks how to archive, getting hip hop studies, creating classes called hip hop studies, helping create hip hop studies departments, connecting with history departments and anthropology departments, and really having university value hip hop, different, hip hop studies or classes and this kind of thing. And I guess the reason I would say she's a pioneer in it is because for me, I saw her doing it like at least 20 plus, almost 30, like 30 years ago. And it was not taken seriously at that time in the way that it is now. And interestingly enough, there have been a couple of generations of folks that have gone through university and have whole degrees in, hip hop studies through maybe a history department or anthropology department. And sometimes I even teach um, at University of Michigan. I've been invited to be a they have a word for it when you're not like a tenured professor, when you're like a teaching artist and you go in. I don't know, is that an adjunct? I'm not sure the proper term, but I've been invited into Professor Stevens' class. He's inside of University of Michigan, inside of the history department, and theirs is, I believe, is it African American studies or Africana studies, and then within that they have hip hop studies. So any hootie rooty tootie, I'm sharing all of that to share that this idea about studying hip hop and in this formal way, like in university, and then really understanding about, using data, um, using mapping, using just all these different tools. We're here. And like I said, we're at least a couple generations in. So we've got, a lot of various perspectives and ways in which this whole thing has been shaped over time. And that also includes the idea of hip hop feminism, which we say was birthed with Joan Morgan. And it is the 20th anniversary this month of When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost. So we're now 20 plus years into this field of what we would call hip hop feminism. So before I go to the article, I want to go back over to the chat and I want to see what folks have been saying, because I wasn't reading the chat and I like to read the chat. So peace, peace, peace. So you're looking forward to some hot discussion. Today I'm going to go into the article. So So Dr. Ball is in there. I know you said don't call you Dr. Ball. Jared is in there and says, no, very little. Let me put it up so y'all can see. Says, I know very little, better or more than you. I'm learning and have learned from you and Martha for a long time, though there is a disagreement here or there. I mean, so this is something. So thank you for saying that, Jared. So something I want to say also to people who are new. The way that I do this show, when I bring an article, it's not because I agree with the article. I mean, I'm not going to bring y'all no right wing stuff unless we really need to talk about it. But it's an article that I find interesting. So I try to, when I read the article, identify places where I either disagree or where I have questions around either ideas or language or terminology or premise and this kind of thing. I also will say I am not a scholar, although I would say I'm probably a guerrilla intellectual. So the way in which I approach these articles is as a person who's actually a fan of hip hop, who also DJs and loves hip hop, and who organizes hip hop events that center women. And so that's the perspective that I'm coming at it from. So I read a lot of different, I'll say types of philosophies, but I mean, within, I'll say from the left and from from the left and lefter, right? And so when I'm bringing these articles, it's because this might have made me think of something, or that might have made me think of something, and I want to bring it to this sphere to just spark conversation, or also to give a give us something that we could look at to have a conversation about, right? And because these folks have done research, they've thought about things, they've read, other people who have written things and then they've come to certain conclusions, but it doesn't mean that um it doesn't mean that I agree with the article or anything that they're saying. It doesn't mean I disagree. It just means that I think it's interesting and that it's worth exploring. So I just wanted to start with that. So I think there's somebody in the chat like that needs to get put on a timeout. Let me just put them on a timeout because yeah, it's annoying. Okay. Now I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to be reading a lot. For those who are new here, I do a lot of reading over here. I'll try to, you know, go back and forth and back and forth. Let me see what y'all see. And okay, boom, you can see what I see. All right, great. So I go on this site. It's called academia.edu. They have a lot of resources on here. They have a lot of different scholars and people who write about different things. If you all use this, you could put in different prompts. I do have a profile on here. As you can see, there are other people who have profiles on here. And so you can see the references. It'll give you the references that these folks are using. So if you want to go and look up the references that they're referencing, like that's pretty cool. So I'm starting with the introduction. So there's this handbook, like I said, that's in the Journal of Hip Hop Studies. And it's a special issue. It's a 21st century BITCH, so bitch frameworks. Hip Hop Feminism Comes of Age. This is volume 7, issue number 1, from summer 2020. And the intro is on pages 8 to 18. And so this intro was written by Aria S. Halliday and Ashley N. Payne. So, intro. This is for my ratchet bitches. This special issue is dedicated to the bad bitches, the ratchet women, the classy women, the hood feminists. The feminism isn't for everybody feminists. Those women, femmes, and girls who consciously represent and reconstruct Black girl womanhood, the creatives, innovators, the women who are often imitated but never duplicated. This issue is dedicated to you, the ways in which you challenge us to redefine what it means to be Black girls and women in this world and what it means to reclaim power over your own representation of images. This issue is for you, defined by you, and inspired by you. I'm going to stop sharing for like half a second because I want to say something. So, I think there has over time been this conversation. And when I say over time, I mean, let's call it the last 20 years. Which in the history of time, how did I get rid of this person? That's just like disgusting. Let me try that. Okay. So, over the last like 20 years since like I said, Joan Morgan's When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost, there's been a plethora and a variance of what I would call Black hip hop feminists, right? Because we know that all hip hop feminists aren't just Black. So I'm talking now about Black hip hop feminists. And there are varying views around, feminism. If y'all recall, a few weeks ago, we read, oh my goodness, is her name Gaunt, where she highlighted around teenage bedroom culture. And just to truncate the point, she talked about how teenage back in the day, yes, Kira Gaunt, thank you so much. So just for folks who weren't here, in that episode, that one I believe is called Decolonizing Twerking. In essence, what she was talking about is, so I'll out myself. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm 52, and so like for me, in my teenage years, and let's say like my generation, we would be in our bedroom, we would have our posters on our wall. For me, it was like New Edition and, you know, magazine pictures from like Right On and Black Beat. And I would have my boom box, and I would play my I would play records on my record player, like vinyls on my record player, Houdini, Run DMC. You know, these are things I got for Kwanzaa and Christmas. So it's like, you know, vinyls that were like hip hop of the time, like popular hip hop of the time, right? And, you know, playing the records, dancing, you know, and there's a mirror there. So, of course, I'm a young Black girl, grew up in an urban neighborhood. I'm in the bedroom and I'm dancing and twerking. I probably got on my, you know, tank top and panties, you know, to be honest. And I'm probably like a teenager, right? And so what she was saying is there's a bedroom culture that has existed for teens, and definitely teen, like Black teen girls, where you got your posters, you got your music, and it's your world, and you're in there and you're dancing and you're having a good time. It's your whole world. I didn't have a TV in my bedroom, and it was the days of like a house phone. And I think I didn't get like my own phone until I was probably like, I think it was like 15 or 16. But it was just the actual phone itself. I didn't have my own line. Like the line was connected. Like my mom could pick that phone up anytime, like get off the phone. So, but it felt like my own world. I got my diary, and, you know, I'm a teenager. So I got dolls in there, and it's like a point of like exploring my, like trying to explore who I am, like my body, my femininity, my young womanhood as I'm developing. And so it's explore your body, it's just exploring, right? But the ways in which I had that freedom to be in my room and have these explorations, um learning about, you know, how to access my power, um there was a certain, I want to say like safety, at least for me in my home, in my experience, there was a certain safety for me, because it was like I was in my room, and I'm doing my thing, and I have like my own world, and then my mom calls me for dinner, something like that. And she was saying how that type of culture does exist for teen girls, but the difference is they're putting it on the internet. And so the article just has a question about what is this, like what is this, right? So for young girls, in us wanting to not limit them in trying to access their power, and wanting them to feel comfortable and confident and free and safe in their bodies and explore their sexuality, and all of that. But like what does it mean when they're on the internet, right? Because we know that the internet is not a safe space, it's not a private split space, and that other people can actually access, um you know, to see what, you know, these young girls are doing. So anyway, if you want to watch the article, I can go, it goes more deeper, you know, it reads the whole thing. But I'm saying that to say that in the context of what I just read here, um I'm reminded about that conversation of what does it mean for, in this context, Black girls, young Black girls, and Black women to have access to their power. Like, what is that? What does it look like? What does it mean? And what does it mean in the context of hip hop? And as we're experiencing it, let's say, like, we, you know, a little Kim, a Salt and Pepper, um, a Meg The Stallion, you know, um, it has disrupted and disturbed, you know, mainstream, and the patriarchy, because um there is a need for people to police women's bodies, black women's bodies especially. But I guess for me, what I want to see more of in these conversations is us teasing out what is that. I'm trying to think of like what are the proper words, like what is that lane or that line, or what, how do we like not police black women and black girls bodies, but then also acknowledge that there are unsafe people on the internet. And so all that, while we want to say that we have all this power and all this kind of thing, there are actually real consequences. Like in real time right now, I live in Detroit, which is the what is that called? Uh how can I forget the term? Human trafficking capital. And so a lot of young people are coming, getting put into, a lot of young black girls and young boys are getting put into human trafficking. Like that's a real thing, right? It actually exists. I actually have two young people that I was working with, and one of them was actually snatched and put into human trafficking, and they got her back, and her mom's trying to help, deprogram her and got her on all types of programs. Another one, her sister was snatched, put into human trafficking, and the same thing. And those two actually are trying to help each other. It's such a prevalent thing that's going on that, you know, um, I'm not saying that hip hop is to blame. Like, there are major ills in the world, and they have everything to do with capitalism and this entire system. Um, and I guess when I'm on the left, in the land of moving the left, more lefter, and us having conversations as so-called folks on the left or the black left or whatever, I feel like we need to like tease that out more. The same way that we have the struggle when we talk about like, you know, abolition, and then we say, well, what do we do with the people that are harming people in the community? It's the same, like, it's the same question, and it comes from the same place, because we want to bang on the system, and we actually have people that are being harmed, in the process. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there for discussion. It's not in the article, but it's something that I I thought about while reading the article. So anyway, let me go back to the chat to include y'all. So Maggie says, in this teen culture of the room as the young girl's own world, American centric. Yes, that's a very American centric thing. That is true. So I wonder how similar, different that culture is, and how American TV shows depict girlhood. This is true. I don't have the answer. We'd have to ask other folks, because I grew up here, so I don't have I didn't grow up in, multiple places in my teen years, so I don't have that. But that's a good question. And if folks have experiences that were different, like, please share. And Maggie also says, I also wonder what it means for teen girls to access their power through the seemingly solitary process of being alone in one's room. I mean, I can only speak as a person that was raised as an only child. Um, that there is a sense of power. And it's funny, because right before my mom passed away, rest in peace, she used to joke with me all the time, because I found out later that I thought I had all this privacy, and she told me that I was reading your diary and all that. I was like, wow. She was like, girl, privacy, you're a child living in my home, I'm responsible for you, you can't have no privacy. She didn't tell me that back then, though, which is interesting, because I was writing everything up in that diary. So my mom knew everything. I ain't even know it. I'm thinking she's psychic, but whatever. Love you, mom. So this is still part of the intro. It says the hip hop feminist journey. So fashion from the work, tenacity, creativity, and strength of women in hip hop, and the generation of women born from hip hop feminism celebrates women's love for the culture and their battle for identity, representation, and respect. While women have been consciously breaking barriers in hip hop since its inception, thus the name of this show, Beyond Breaking Barriers, um, In the 1970s, scholarship at the nexus of hip hop and feminism can be traced back to Trisha Rose's Black Noise in 1994 and Joan Morgan's When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost in 99, who both note the contradictory and complicated space Black women occupy within 90s hip hop culture. While some scholars may differentiate between scholarship that studies hip hop through a feminist lens and hip hop feminism scholarship, let me repeat that. While some scholars may differentiate between scholarship that studies hip hop through a feminist lens and hip hop feminism scholarship, we contend that both authors represent the foundations of what we call today hip hop feminism. Both authors remarked on the influence of Black feminist foremothers on the changes in women's relationships with themselves and the ever changing culture, while pushing for the need to craft a feminism that represents the women of the hip hop generation. Rose began her examination of feminism in hip hop with a discussion of Black women rappers' themes of sexual politics, racism, and sexism. Rose argues that Black women rappers revolutionized Black women's representation by challenging white hegemonic and male centered dominance in hip hop culture. Let me repeat that. So, Rose began her examination of feminism in hip hop with a discussion of Black women rappers' themes of sexualized politics, racism, and sexism. Rose argues that Black women rappers revolutionized Black women's representation by challenging white hegemonic and male centered dominance in hip hop culture, Western beauty aesthetics, sexual objectification, and cultural invisibility. Through a visual and lyrical analysis of MC Light and Salt and Pepper music videos, Rose ultimately finds that the presence of Black female rappers, that she's quoting, the presence of Black female rappers in the urban working class Black hairstyles, clothes, expressions, and subject matter of their rhymes provide young Black women with a small, culturally reflective public space. Oh my goodness, I gotta read that again. It says Rose ultimately finds that, quote, the presence of Black female rappers in the urban, working class Black hairstyles, clothes, expressions, and subject matter of their rhymes provide young Black women with a small, culturally reflective public space. I agree with that. Okay, Joan Morgan, often credited with the birth of hip hop feminism, discussed a more personal journey with hip hop and feminism. By chronicling the relationship between her feminist consciousness and hip hop, Morgan encouraged Black women like her to push beyond the feminism of their mothers and embrace the complexity of life and hip hop and life and love in hip hop. For Morgan, her oft cited phrase, quote, fucking with the grays, end quote, challenged any continued identification with or usage of respectability politics that derided pleasure and sexual agency for Black women. It also positioned feminism as a balm for the fissures occurring between Black men and Black women as a result of the growing misogyny in hip hop. As ideological foremothers to hip hop feminism and the privileging of the experiences of Black girls, women, and femmes in the hood, Trisha Rose and Joan Morgan's words laid the fertile ground on which the field of hip hop feminism, as well as this special issue, have emerged. I want to stop sharing for like half a second, and I want to just remind folks that this is a special issue, like I said, in the Hip Hop Journal that's dedicated to hip hop feminism. And I'm reading the introduction And this introduction is written by Aria S. Halliday and Ashley N. Payne. I just want to continue to give the credits as I read in case people are just chiming in. And regarding Joan Morgan, it's When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost, My Life as a Hip Hop Feminist. And Trisha Rose, Black Noise, Rap Music, and Black Culture in Contemporary America. So I want to also say that this article, I want to remind us that this article is using the word women, woman. And in 2024, I think it's very important to differentiate girls from women, children from women. And that has to do with consent, because by definition, right, like children can't like consent to things, especially um with regard to sexuality, right? And the ways in which hip hop has been abused, um or used to abuse people, young girls, young boys, women, men. I think making that distinction uh in terms of when we talk about um women accessing their power, and especially as regards to their sexuality, I think part of what was frustrating for me, and I was one of the like mute R. Kelly activists or whatever here in Detroit, like help. I was on the leadership team of a lot of that work, and something that was frustrating to me in having those conversations with people um, was that people were conflating the idea of a woman and a girl, and say and consent, and and I also want to say one more thing about consent, that um consent means that the person either is in a position to lead, or the person either verbally consents. There's a definite visibility of the consent. And I want to, this isn't really what's being talked about in this article. It's just coming up for me as I'm reading the article, because many times when I'm in conversations about hip hop and women in hip hop, and it and and folks are talking about sexuality, I think what gets conflated is people saying things like, well, back in the day, we didn't have all of these girls, taking all their clothes off. And um, I think that number one, the the people who were um, taking their clothes off, if you will, or the people who were, rapping, were not children, except if you go back to like a Roxanne Shante, and also if you go back in the earlier days, like in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, when majority, well, not majority, I'll say maybe half of the people who were practicing were like, early 20s, right? And there were some folks who we would say are children. And when I say children, I'm going to say anyone that's under 18, right? And I'm saying under 18. I know in some states y'all are like, well, 16 is legal, but whatever. And I want to differentiate that. And I also want to tease out that, we talked about this in a couple of earlier episodes. We celebrate Roxanne Shante, and they brought this up in the Ladies First documentary. She was a child. I think, was she 14, 15? She was like a little girl. And she was battling men. Now, they might have been young men, early 20s, but she was still battling men. And the content, uh, was a sexual content, and the ways in which the men talked about her, how to treat her, the respect she didn't deserve, and the ways in which they would abuse her sexually, like that's disgusting, number one. I think, but number two, I think what happens is in these conversations about women in hip hop, when the idea of a woman and a girl or an adult and a child gets conflated, which often we know that Black children, boys, girls, are often made adultified and made to be adults, because there's just a belief that Black people and especially Black women's bodies, but Black people's bodies, um are not valued, right? Our thoughts, our personhood are not valued. And so when we conflate these ideas about adults and children when we're having a conversation, I think that it just adds to the confusion. And I think we need to tease those things out. And it's not to say that every adult person or person over 18 was consenting. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that, like, again, I'll repeat myself, by definition, children cannot consent. So, what we're talking about in this introduction is related to women and girls who are consenting adults, right? Meaning, and let's be clear about consent. Coercion is also a non-consent. And I know that's a contentious point, but coercion is not is considered that unconsenting, right? So if you coerce, it's still non-consensual. So I think what we see is with people when they talk about in modern terms, like a Meg the Stallion, for instance, um, or even arguably a Little Kim, but I would say Meg the Stallion more than a Little Kim, because I do personally, eh, I wonder if Little Kim actually quote unquote consented by the true definition of consent. But I don't. I'd have to have a conversation with her to ask her. But I know for sure that Meg the Stallion has um, said on many occasions in various articles that she not only consents, but that these are her ideas and they come, these are all her ideations, right? Um, and before I finish reading, I want to tackle Maggie's comment question. How does hip hop feminism tackle capitalism? I feel like it hyper focuses on dismantling respectability politics, that it corners itself into hypersexuality is liberatory, but who owns that image? So that's where me and you agree. That's where me and you agree, Maggie. And so that's why I'm saying, like, this is where it gets confusing. And these are conversations that I want to have, because I agree. And I think Jared always talks about this, like, where does your taste, like, what's the origin of your taste? How did you develop your taste? You developed your taste because it was given to you, in a sense, right? Your media diet. Um, and so, yeah, like, how do we parse that out? Like, how do we understand, right? Like, that there is a need to dismantle the patriarchy, right? And it's a big question. Is the ways in which the hip hop artists, the women hip hop artists that are leading with their sexuality, is it consensual in the true sense of consent? Okay, so let's say that part, okay, yeah. Take it a step further. Is it, I'm trying to think of what would the question be. Is it that these women are actually in charge of their careers in a way that empowers them? That's still a question for me. I'm unsure. Like, because if we say that in the patriarchy, and like you said, in the land of capitalism, right? All these thongs or, whatever, sliding on the pole, twerking, whatever. we could argue that this stuff is for the male gaze because we know that historically sex sells, and that these images and all this behavior is for the pleasure and enjoyment of men, and I initially, and that um there are um, economic, systems that are in place because this is an economy, right? There's like a sex economy, whether it's voyeurism or practice, meaning you could be a sex worker and do phone sex. You could be a sex worker and actually have contact, so and everything in between. You could be a dancer, like there's all these different ways that you could be involved, and that's far saying sex worker. But I mean, in the land of like purchasing image, like pornography, whether it's through like pictures and magazines, making videos or whatever, like we know that there's a whole commerce and industry around sex. And so yeah, like it conflates those, it that right there gets conflated when we talk about power, right? Like power and control. So who's in control of that economy, right? um anyway, these are like questions, because we know that if we're strictly talking about like music industry and like selling records, we know who's in control of that specific like industry. But anyway, I'll keep having questions that take us down rabbit holes. But Rouse Pasta Sauce says coercion as quote unquote compliance under duress rather than as willful agreement is consent. Wait, say wait. Let me think if I understand what you're saying. Coercion as compliance under duress rather than as willful agreement in consent. Okay, right. Exactly. Thank you. Maggie said, thanks. Can one consent if we have been conditioned as young girls to see coercion and objectification as normal and expected? So, for instance, you said young girls. I just want to repeat again. Children, by definition, like by legal definition, children can't consent to sexual acts with adults or each other. Like you can't I don't want to say legal, I'm not an attorney, but children by definition, they can't consent, right? So that right there is like a non sequitur, right? Now, in the realm of adults though, coercion is where people's consent is taken away, and it's under that definition of non-consent. So but I'm gonna keep reading. Let me share the screen again. Okay, boom. And again, I want to reiterate, this is not what the article is talking about. I'm interjecting things that I'm thinking as I'm reading this article, just because I feel like these things need to be said, because I feel like we don't say them enough. So continuing within that paragraph, in true fucking with the Grays fashion, Cheryl Keys fleshed out the core ideas and tenets of hip hop feminism. Keys centered female voices in hip hop music to identify and theorize the ways Black female rappers and in turn listeners maneuver through identity construction. Known for the 4 distinct Black female identities within hip hop, Keys helped us cherish the fluidity of identity for Black women as the queen mother, that's one. The fly girl, that's another one. Sister with attitude, that's another one. And the lesbian, that's another one. Celebrating how Black female rappers can, however, shift between these categories or belong to more than one simultaneously. So if you can see, there's a number of 5 right there. That's I'm gonna say Cheryl Keys wrote Empowering Self, and that's from page 266. And I will say that again, this article is from 2020, and it's citing references from different eras. If someone could look up what year, um, okay, here it is. Here it is. It's also number 4. Number 5 is a recite. If you go here to number 4, it says Cheryl L. Keys, empowering self, making choices, creating spaces, Black female identity via rap music performance. And that is in the Journal of American Folklore. From the year 2000, from pages 255 to 269. So as you can see, that's from the year 2000, because she uses the word lesbian, and she says sister with attitude, and she says fly girl, right, and the Queen Mother. And interestingly enough, I think if we go and look at how these categorizations had played themselves out, like up until that point, I feel like we have way more categorizations in today's world. And so it will be interesting to see those categories updated. Says building from the foundational works of Rose and Morgan, Kira Gaunt, who we read before, and Gwendolyn Pugh denote the role of rhetorical practices and expressive culture in Black women's resistance to dominant masculine discourses. So that says number 6. So that's from Kira Gaunt. It's called The Games Black Girls Play, Learning the Ropes from Double Dutch to Hip Hop. And that is in 2006. And Gwendolyn Pugh wrote Check It While I Wreck It, Black Womanhood, Hip Hop Culture, and the Public Sphere. And that's from 2004. So Gaunt discusses the expressive and musical phenomenon present within Black girls' games and how their kinetic orality can inform Black women's participation in hip hop culture. Kinetic orality. I've never heard that expression, but that's a dope expression. And if I'm not mistaken, I feel it's like the way they move their body as like a language, but I didn't look it up. Gaunt argues Black girls' musical games promote the skillful development of musical authority that reflects Blackness, gender, individual expressive ability, and the very musical styles and approaches that later contribute to adult African American musical activity. And that's in number 7. And that's from page 251 of Gaunt's The Games Black Girls Play. So many of the popular Black male artists and musical traditions bearing financial success, Gaunt contends, are rooted in the sing-song games of Black girls in the playground. So I relate to that so much. All those like hand games and foot games and all that double Dutch rhyming. Pugh likewise encouraged us to understand Black women's struggle for representation in the public sphere by using hip hop as a counter space. Pugh discusses bringing rec as a, quote, rhetorical act that has close ties to various other speech acts that are often linked to Black womanhood, talking back, going off, turning it out, having a nigger bitch fight, or being a diva. This is like a quote. Pugh connects bringing rec to how Black women participants in hip hop have used these skills to bring rec to stereotypes and marginalization that impact how they navigate and control their own identities and representations in both the public and hip hop spheres. As hip hop continued to make waves in academic scholarship, Murray Foreman and Mark Anthony Neal Gwendolyn Pugh et al., and Janelle Hobson and R. Diane Bartlow anthologized critical conversations surrounding hip hop feminism. In That's the Joint, the Hip Hop Studies Reader, Foreman and Neal devote a section titled I'll Be Nina Simone Defecating on Your Microphone to the works of notable hip hop feminists Rose, Morgan, Keys, and Gaunt. Gwendolyn Pugh, Elaine Richardson, who we've read here, Aisha Durham, who I told y'all came and wrote amazing work that we read and was on a panel that I organized here in Detroit. And Rachel Ramesist, who had the Women in Hip Hop conference that was like 5 years in existence, I believe, in Minnesota, I think. It's called her book, I think, is called Homegirls Make Some Noise, which was published in 2007. It substantiates hip hop feminism in the academy and expands the hip hop feminism discussion to the intersections of gender, race, class, and sexuality in hip hop culture. In her essay, More Than Baby Mamas, Black Mothers and Hip Hop Feminism, Marlo David notes that hip hop, quote, feminist critique makes space for the gray areas, the ironies, and the contradictions that are part of hip hop and life. But it should also provide a way out of the mire of postmodern detachment to invite women and men to get down to the business of bringing wreck against the social forces that control their lives. In 2008, Janelle Hobson and R. Diane Bartlow created a special issue in Meridians dedicated to women, hip hop, and popular culture. The special issue addressed the debates and intergenerational tensions regarding the liberatory potential of hip hop, the global significance and transnational expression of popular music, and the implications of hip hop as both hegemonic, a successful corporate commodity, and counter hegemonic street subculture phenomenon. And so within this special issue, Whitney Peoples traces the development of hip hop feminism in academia and the theoretical relationship hip hop feminism has with second wave Black feminism. So for Peoples, hip hop emerges as the generational and culturally relevant vehicle through which hip hop feminists can spread their message of critical analysis and empowerment. She notes that hip hop feminism argues for the right to self-define feminist identities and praxis, yet the right to self-define without a larger systemic strategy can become an isolated and individual solution. We named the sources we used up there. Let me think about that. Let me read that again. She said, she notes that hip hop feminism argues for the right to self define feminist identities and praxis, yet the right to self define without a larger systemic strategy can become an isolated and individual solution. You know, I think I agree with that. And yeah, I'm thinking about that. I mean, in essence, I think that's where we kind of are right now, right? I like when I mean by that's where we are right now. I mean, like, so for instance, there was the question about uh uh capitalism, right? And I think in its current iteration, the 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 way that hip hop feminism, and let me say this, in the commercial world of the music industry, the ways in which we see hip hop feminism in practice is from a very capitalist framework. And so back to your question, Maggie, around, yeah, like, which kind of makes me think about what Jared always talks about in terms of like who's driving the car, right? Like um yeah, it can be a very it can be a very like a re there the way that we see it now, the typical like stereotypes are reinforced, right? So um the whole idea of individualism, like I don't need a man, um you know, I'm gonna drug this guy to take his jewels. I shouldn't laugh at that, um but I think, I'm gonna like, I dress, yeah, I can dress however I want to dress. I can buy the clothes that I want to buy. I think those are all like super capitalist ideas, ideals in a way. Yeah, it's very centered on like capitalism and individualism and hyper individualism, right? The content, right? So it is difficult. It is difficult. I could see like it's very difficult to see um how any of this is like useful, right? Although for me, I think it's useful in terms of like tearing down these walls and tearing down these stereotypes. And I'm not going to deny, I do think a lot of these messages are harmful, but I think they're harmful more because because we know that overwhelmingly, even though hip hop music has become mainstream now, but overwhelmingly we know that hip hop is for youth and youth culture, right? That's who it's marketed to, that's who it's for. And so we know that um these these messages are being promoted to young people. So it's not so much like, okay, well, let's tear down or dismantle this oppressive system. It's like, let's twerk as much as we can so we can make these dudes buy us shit, because we can manipulate them. I don't know, it's like really weird. And that's not the only message. And I'm not trying to reduce it to that, but it could kind of get reduced to that. So yeah. Um let me see. So yeah, it's really difficult. Just a difficult moment to try to I don't want to say I'm trying to defend it, but so in 2010 and later in the Crunk Feminist Collection, right? In 2015, the Crunk Feminist Collective, co-founded by Brittany Cooper and Susan Morris, released their Hip Hop Feminist Manifesto, which situates hip hop feminism as a next generation feminism that ain't your mama's feminism. They proclaim for themselves and for us, we love ourselves even when we get no love. We recognize that we are our own best thing, our own best argument, and patriarchy's worst nightmare. This remix of hip hop feminism ushered in new scholarship related to the new generation's feminist struggles through Black girlhood studies, politics, sexual identity, respectability politics, and ratchet feminisms. In addition to the Crunk Feminist Collective's work, Aisha Durham, Brittany Cooper, and Susanna Morris surveyed the field of hip hop feminism from Morgan's foundational work to the new ideologies curated by the next generation of hip hop feminists. These scholars proclaimed hip hop feminism as a theoretical framework for those in the hip hop generation, those coming of age in the 1990s to engage Black women in the contradictory spaces that encompass our lives. They constructed hip hop feminism as an umbrella term to encompass creative intellectual work regarding girls and women in hip hop culture and or as part of the hip hop generation. So according to Durham, Cooper, and Morris, the future of hip hop feminism is based in exploring the connections between hip hop and traditional feminist epistemologies. That looks like a word that Jared be using. Epistemologies. I gotta look that word up. If you know what it means, let me know. But I'm about to look that up. Um, epistemologies, epistemology. What is an epistemology? Y'all, I gotta know what this is so I know what I'm talking about. It says the theory of knowledge, especially with regard to its methods, validity, and scope. Epistemology is the investigation of what distinguishes justified belief from opinion. He grappled with metaphysics and epistemology in his writings and sermons. It says the theory of knowledge, especially with regard to its methods, validity, and scope. Epistemology is the investigation of what distinguishes justified belief from opinion. So let me go back here and read this again. So it says, where did I find that word? Where were you? Okay, up here. So it says, right, according to Durham, Cooper, and Morris, the future of hip hop feminism is based in exploring the connections between hip hop and traditional feminist epistemologies. Oh, beliefs or ideology. I think that's what they're saying. So their hip hop feminism uses hip hop to understand and critique Black sexual politics, connecting hip hop feminism and second wave Black feminism more closely. So furthermore, it expands the knowledge of new media and how hip hop feminists use it, reframes urban fiction within a hip hop feminist generation framework, connecting it to the blues and Afrofuturist literature, music, and art. Let me see something because I think Jared might have told us what it is in the chat. Okay, you said ways of knowledge. Shouts out to DDUBB3000 is a new member. So Breaking Ground says ways of knowledge or knowing. Thank you. And Jaman, thank you. Jaman said, how do you know what you know? And several people said Jab knows what that means. Leah Bogg says that, and ontological always gets me like, what? So it says feminist ways of knowing. So thank you for that. So hip hop scholarship is continued to be discussed in various avenues and disciplines spanning from discussions in music, culture, sociology, philosophy, and gender studies. In the mid 2000s, education scholarship discovered the educational possibilities of hip hop in K through 12 teaching. While hip hop was being discussed as a global phenomenon aimed at providing culturally relevant pedagogy, Elaine Richardson, Ruth Nicole Brown, Bettina Love, and Trevor Lindsay were publishing hip hop based educational boundaries with the creation of hip hop feminist pedagogies and literacies. Uh, Ruth Nicole Brown, I met her. She has Soul Hot, which is like this feminist collective of hip hop artists, and she's from Chicago, and she's a professor, a doctor, and doctorate, and she also came to the Women in Hip Hop conference I organized here in Detroit and spoke on that panel with Aisha Durham, and she worked really diligently and created the Department of African and African American Studies at Michigan State University, the newly formed department, which is at Michigan State. So shouts out to her. I interviewed her on Piper Carter podcast a couple of years ago. But I want to bring her on here. I've been reaching out to her. She's very busy because, like I said, she actually created the department. So shouts out to her because Michigan State did not have that. Well, it's not a department, it's actually a school. So she created the School of African and African American History, or is it Studies? But it's a new school that's at Michigan State. University. So shouts out to her. She invited me to come uh to the opening. Bettina Love, I met her at a hip hop pedagogies conference at Ohio State. Um and yeah, that was pretty dope. So Dr. E, where's Dr. E? Uh where'd she go? Up here? Yeah, Elaine Richardson. So Dr. E does that. We've read her work on here previously. So all these people are like really dope. These are like, leaders in this field of hip hop feminism, hip hop pedagogy, and hip hop feminist pedagogy. Uh They center the experiences of Black girls in education and push for pedagogies and literacies that recreate and redefine Black girlhood in education. In Saving Our Lives, Hearing Our Truths, and Black Girl Celebration, Ruth Nicole Brown defines hip hop feminist pedagogy as the practice of engaging young people using elements of hip hop culture and feminist methodology for the purpose of transforming oppressive institutions, policies, relationships, and beliefs. Ruth Nicole Brown's hip hop feminist space, Soul Hot, acts as a transformative space where Black girls celebrate the spaces from which they emerge, who they are, and the ever changing nature of who they will become. Bettina Love in Hip Hop Little Sisters Speak chronicles hip hop's influence on the Southern Black girls' racial and gendered identity construction, as well as their lived experiences. Additionally, Bettina Love encourages researchers to navigate their own personalities in relation to the Black girls they research, thereby shifting power dynamics and centering Black girls' knowledge of their lives. Adding to Ruth Nicole Brown's and Bettina Love, Treva Lindsay argues that hip hop feminism marks a feminist discourse that both embraces the lived experiences of Black women and girls while also not shying away from the politics of desire, pleasure, and play that structure those experiences. Through hip hop feminism, Lindsay reminds us that inclusivity should be at the core of hip hop based education. So, while hip hop feminist conversations have been centered around the educational experiences of Black girls, current literature and Black girl womanhood identity development is shifting the ways we consider Black feminist ideologies of respectability and reshape feminisms to be inclusive of ratchet and hood voices, as well as sexual liberation and freedom. L.H. Stallings, Terry Pickens, Nikki Lane, Robin Boylorn, Brittany Cooper, and Bettina Love all note the evolution of ratchet feminisms as hip hop feminist spaces of performativity and creativity while dismantling heteropatriarchy standards of respectability. Brittany Cooper and Robin Boylorn each discuss the politics of ratchet respectability as a critique of how society has defined respectability for Black women and call for us to embrace ratchetness. It's a period there. So I named the other publications, but Trevor B. Lindsay's is called Let Me Blow Your Mind, Hip Hop Feminist Futures in Theory and Praxis in Urban Education, #1. That's from 2015. I think I named the rest of these. Well, the full name of Bettina Love's is Hip Hop Little Sisters Speak, Negotiating Hip Hop Identities and Politics in the New South. I think the rest of these I named. Well, Brittany Cooper's Unclutching My Mother's Pearls, or Ratchetness and the Residue of Respectability, which is inside of the Crunk Feminist Collection from 2012. I think the rest of these I named. Sorry. If I go here to say, so Brittany Cooper notes that the embrace of ratchetness is simultaneously a dismissal of respectability, a kind of intuitive understanding of all the ways that respectability as a political project has failed Black women and continues to disallow the access that we've been taught to think it will give. L.H. Stallings and Bettina Love discussed the performative possibilities of what Stallings called the ratchet imaginary and how it serves as a place for identity construction and critique. So Terry Pickens adds that the ratchet imaginary articulates a desire for individuality, regardless of the ideas and wants of a punitive collective. And further, conversations surrounding ratchet respectability and Black girlhood have also noted the complicated and messy nature of Black girlhood and sexuality. Our very own co editor, Aria Halliday, notes that Black girls are believed to be sexually promiscuous or desirous of sexual relationships of how their bodies have developed. And Black girls are taught to be ashamed of their bodies and sexual potential. Hip hop feminism rests at the center of this discussion as conversations surrounding sexual pleasure and identity are constructed and negotiated within hip hop culture. So within this past and present history, then, uh, the articles in this special issue take seriously the rhymes, aesthetics, attitudes, and cultural knowledge of Black women, girls, femmes, framing Black women's relationship to discourses of embodiment, respectability, sex and sexuality, democracy, capitalism, contemporary movements. The authors in this issue argue collectively for liberation through the enacting of hip hop feminism as a framework for epistemology. And so I want to, again, I know I said it before, but again, just in case people have just joined, this is just an introduction to a piece that is inside of the Journal of Hip Hop Studies. And it's a special issue for the 21st century BITCH frameworks. They call it Bitch Frameworks. Hip Hop Feminism Comes of Age. And it's volume 7, issue 1 from the summer of 2020. And this intro is pages 8 to 18. And the introduction is called Savage and Savvy Mapping Contemporary Hip Hop Feminism. It's written by Aria S. Halliday and Ashley N. Payne. And I want to say that this this Journal of Hip Hop Studies is a collection of different articles that have been researched by different hip hop scholars, right? And so this introduction basically is like an overview of what is inside of this entire article on hip hop feminism that's inside this journal of hip hop studies, and they give several their references, and they cite their references, so you can go. Many of the references that they've given, they're pretty mainstream references, and I think this is kind of like a 101 of I would say it's a 101 of hip hop feminism, but I think it's a good place to start. I'm using Women's History Month to kind of lean in to this, but we'll continue learning from this. So again, this is a special issue, right? And so it says, here and now, join the cipher. So we open this special issue with an open letter to city girls as a celebration of twerking and the sexual liberation Black women have been experiencing recently due to Black women rappers like the City Girls, Meg Thee Stallion, and Lizzo. So Kira March notes that the reclamation of the Black femme body is reliant on the discourse of sexual agency, autonomy, and power that the City Girls flaunt effortlessly. March hails the pathways created for Southern Black girls through their ability to reject respectability with these role models. She argues that the City Girls allows Black girls to now see that conforming to society does not make you any more of a woman. taking seriously the theorization, ratchet and hood feminisms as imaginative spaces for identity construction. Ashley Payne and Corey Miles consider the lessons Black girls, women, femmes, and offer in educational and rural Southern spaces. Payne argues that Black girls construct, celebrate, challenge, and critique Black girlhood and their own identities through negotiations of classy ratchet dichotomies. Miles similarly centers Black women rappers in rural North Carolina and how they situate their selves as historical and modern actors within the hip hop tradition in American society. Through gendered performances of trap performativity, together they push forward the contemporary discourses around ratchet and hood feminisms to embrace Black girls and Black women in the most rural Black communities. Furthering previous scholarship on Black women rappers, art, and creativity, Kimia Davis and Isis Kinney and Diana Kong challenge readers to conceptualize how contemporary Black women rappers have negotiated Black women's role in feminist discourses of citizenship, power, privilege, and democracy in the US. As an artist collective, Davis and Kenny use poetry, fine art, and home decor to argue for the use of creativity in hip hop feminism as a way of changing how democracy is felt in every day. With the proliferation of global hip hop culture, alongside the continued murder and assault of Black people in the United States, they encourage us all to take up art as freedom making, the necessary act to accomplish radical justice. Diana Kong highlights Cardi B's and City Girls' aesthetics of scamming as a means of refashioning Black women's access to power and privilege by claiming money and other material objects for themselves and their communities. This new distribution of wealth has the potential for a kind of justice that communities of color can find liberating, challenging hegemonic discourses of capitalism and ownership. Collectively, Davis and Kenny and Kong hasten the necessities of Black girls, women's, and femmes' creativity in music and other art forms to liberate us and our communities now. Okay, wait, I see a pause right there for a second because I don't agree. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that um uh he says I don't know what that means. So I have problems with that. I mean, let me say something. I don't so when Cardi B is talking about scamming, she's not talking about um the PPP loan and like scamming the US government, which I don't have a problem with. Like people who did that, whatever, get your reparations however you can get it. But what she was talking about was Black men who happen to like be uh you know people who frequented the strip club where she worked. Now, while I don't agree with their behavior in terms of selling drugs to people in their community or whatever they were doing, I don't agree with the misogyny they were, practicing in that moment, and I don't agree with the possible abusive behaviors that they also may have been doing. I don't agree with drugging people, right? Because that takes away their consent. And in the land of consent, I mean, if you drug a person, that takes their consent away, and I would consider that abuse. Um, and it's not like she was like, in the spook who sat by the door, remember the sister that when the agent was going to her and was like, uh uh is he this, is he that, and she was like, oh nah baby. It's not even like this is for like the revolution or for a community or to reclaim resources for the greater good. And I'm not trying to justify or like or condemn. I'm analyzing. I'm trying to think about it in this moment. Like when I think about that, like I think like it's an individual and an individual. I think this is an overstep to say, um, yeah, like access to power and capital. Like I think that's a real far reach. I like for me that's reaching. Okay, power, yeah, because there's a like, okay, I'm trying to get my personal power, or somehow in here I can drug someone and take some money out their pocket, or run their credit card and get some money. But I mean, I just think that's a stretch to be like you're getting capital, right? Like you're not, a couple of dollars, even if it's some thousands, like you're not getting capital. I don't know. I disagree. I disagree with that. I disagree with that whole premise. I think like that's when we're talking about that intra-community violence. Um, and the way my feminism is set up, like my feminism is not set up where I want to harm men. That's like, I don't think that's my feminism not set up like that. And Maggie says, I think that the authors of the article might have a different definition of capitalism. They might, right? Like they might have a different definition of capitalism. Anyway, I had to interject that because I didn't want to like think y'all that I co-signed that completely. I mean, maybe I kind of understand what they're trying to say. And like if Cardi was like let me not make suggestions. Let me just say, like, in a fictional book that were written, if there were a rapper who were to drug, um, let's say, a political figure and then get them to like rewrite policy, like I wouldn't have a problem with that. And a fictional in my Afrofuturist fictional novel. Okay. But anyway, let me keep it pushing. Okay, so uh boom. So with the emergence of hip hop feminism and the countless scholars who have carried the mantle of hip hop feminism beyond Rose's Black Noise and Morgan's Chicken Heads, we see Black women rappers as the nexus of feminism, hip hop, and Black femme sexual freedom. As arbiters of the possibilities and potentialities of Black femme futures, Black women rappers represent musical soundtracks to the struggle, pain, love, and joy of Black womanhood and girlhood. Okay, I think, let me stop for a second. I feel like that's a bit far too, because, like, again, um, people, okay, look, let's be honest. They're going a bit far. Okay, I do. Let me put this up so y'all can see, because like this is a bit. They're going a little too far now. I mean, I'm struggling, y'all. Just give me a minute. I'm like, so let me read that again. With the emergence of hip hop feminism and the countless scholars who have carried the mantle of hip hop feminism and beyond, Rose's Black Noise and Morgan's Chicken Heads, we see Black women rappers at the nexus of feminism, hip hop, and Black femme sexual freedom. At the nexus? Uh, I mean, I don't know. I agree. I mean, I gotta think about that some more. Do I agree with that or not? As arbiters of the possibilities and potentialities of Black femme futures, Black women rappers present musical soundtracks to the struggle, pain, love, and joy of Black womanhood and girlhood. No, okay, I know what I have a challenge with. Let's go back to that capitalism conversation. Um, yeah, like, so I want to agree with it in a way, but the capitalism's getting in the way. Was it getting in the way? Yeah, the capitalism's getting in the way. Like it's like a layer of capitalism, like in it, through it, on it, over it, around it. I mean, yeah, like what are they talking about? Um, and maybe it's because in my context of like struggle, like, fighting for struggle, liberation, that whole thing. It's more communal, or like for the community or for the greater good. And like, I don't see that. Like, I do agree, like, it's still capitalism. Like, it's still for this like message around like consumerism, buying things, competition, who's better than who, this really negative sense of, self. So I but I get it, because like, breaking from the way that things like, used to be. But I'm like, come on, y'all. We're already like like 2 decades in of proving this part around that. And think about it. In all of the vagina raps, the capitalism raps, like in, the pro, get your money, get his money, take his money, treat him like crap, treat her like crap, us versus them. I'm better than her. My vagina's juices are better than anyone's. I can do this and do that. And I got all these types of tricks I can do. And whatever else, I'm not going to respect you, no matter what. I'm going to keep doing me. I'm going to have sex with anybody I want to have sex with. I have control over who I have sex with. I have control over what I wear. I can wear chaps on stage with my whole butt out. For all of that, for the last 20 years, guess what? These people still took away women's rights for like reproductive health. So like, I don't agree that like this music is like building power in that way. Now, might be in the land of us um learning how to not practice respectability. I gotta think about that, because I don't know. There's more to think about. Every time I read these things, I got more questions than answers, y'all. But I'm just saying, like, I don't know, man. That's a stretch, yo. That's they stretching. But I like it. It's nice words, though. Sound good. Um, so they say in this special issue, then we pushed ourselves and our authors to think more concretely about the experience of Black girls, women, femmes in an environment full of hope and despair. See, that's that liberalism talk kicking in, but I'm going to keep reading. What lessons can be recovered from the advent of mainstream Black women rappers in the 90s and 2000s? Huh? Let me read that again. What lessons can be recovered from the advent of mainstream Black women rappers in the 90s and 2000s? What experiences and knowledges exist from the rise of Black women rappers, femme, masculine, and non binary in the present moment? What futures of hip hop feminism can we see from both our academic and lived experiences? How can we combine our analytical frameworks with our love for hip hop and Blackness to locate liberatory potential? The essays in the special issue highlight our over developing answers to these questions and the multiplicitous ways you, dear reader, will be encouraged to answer them too. And they said what the kids always say, period. It said period poo. That's hilarious. And then they give at the end, this is their bibliography. I think we've named all these at some point throughout this episode. There are some more that didn't get named, like Nikki Lane, the Black queer work of ratchet race, gender, sexuality, and the anti-politics of respectability. That one Do, 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 do. Is this Bettina Love? Ratchet Lens, Black Queer Youth Agency, Hip Hop, and the Black Ratchet Imagination from the Educational Reader in 2017. Uh, which one? Other ones of these? So, we read Elaine Richardson before. We read a different one, and forgive me if I'm forgetting the one that we read. But if was her any hootie Rudy Tootie. Uh yeah, so that's pretty much it as far as the article is concerned. I'm wondering, let me go back over here. Uh what did Keontae say? I agree with the sentiment that it got too focused on hypersexuality versus respectability politics and then left out the collective politics. Yeah, I mean, so that's where we are, right? 2024. Yeah, I did say that. So what's up, Pamela Jones, Keontae Seeley? I hadn't said peace to y'all before. Yipper99 always comes through with lots of wonderful things. Breaking ground. I think I had said Jaman before. Uh, who's that? Oh, Law. How do you say it? Lawyer Brarian. Okay, Lawyer Brarian. Yeah, and I think I said Rouse pasta sauce. So, number one, I want to say thank you to everyone who joined, who watched. If you're watching the live, thank you for joining in the chat. I want to remind y'all to like, share, subscribe here on Black Power Media. I'm here every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Beyond Breaking Barriers. You'll see me reading articles. I go back and forth between reading articles, interviewing people. I reached out to Coco, so I want to get Coco in here to talk. We had such a great time with my last guest, and it was none other than Burning It Down with Kim Brown. We had a great time. She was so fun. If you guys want to check out that episode, got a lot of great episodes for y'all. I reached out to so many women in hip hop in the community and in just various aspects. And folks are busy, y'all. Folks are busy. I do want to remind everyone that April 5th, Martha Diaz invited us all to New York City to her event, Fresh, Bold, and So Deaf at Lincoln Center. She's going to have the first of a 3-part series where she's going to have this whole day with the pioneer women in hip hop. So she's going to have like a healing circle. She's going to hear from them. There's going to be performances. I'm going to that. I'm going to that. I got to check that out. I'm like, I'm so excited about it. This is going to be very different than, or she says it's going to be different than a lot of the events that she's done before. Check out that episode where we had a conversation. She really dug into, how she helped us develop a way for us to own our archiving. I love that episode because if it wasn't for the work that she was doing, like, well, I won't say if it wasn't for the work that she was doing. Let me just say I'm grateful that the work that she's been doing over the last 30 or so years, because she's been able to not only help people secure their collections, but she's also helped to get collections into places like the Schomburg and just different ways in which she's been able to help. I want to say like create, I don't want to say she created value, but helped us collect our histories and our artifacts and things so that we can have access to them, and then also helped us understand the stories behind these things, and with the people who are helping, who helped create this culture, and just having that vision, just much honor to her. So a lot of what we're able to study about hip hop in history and in these universities is because of the work that she put down, the work she did. So going there to go celebrate her. So even people that are studying hip hop literacies or hip hop history or hip hop pedagogy, or even the fact that that stuff is considered a major that you can get a degree in, that is over there at Harvard. I mean, for what is worth, like Harvard, it's whatever. But I'm saying that for future generations and younger generations to be able to, have those, and that and lead the narratives and the discussions around those histories, like that's super valuable. But any hootie rooty tootie, if you want to know how she did that, watch one of those episodes. And then Maggie says, would you have Jackie on, even if she's a metalhead, maybe talk about metal and hip hop intersections? Yeah, I did reach out to her. I want to honor that she's also healing. And so I don't want to put too much on her. I'm gonna ask her when it's convenient for her to want to do something, because I want to have her on here, because I've heard her talk about music as well. And I want to thank Kofi for the super chat. Thank you so much. Appreciate you for that. Also, to remember, go into the description, and I want y'all to there's a Discord if y'all aren't aware. I'm late to the Discord, but folks are on there yapping it up. Also, there's a Patreon, and if I'm not mistaken, we're all supposed to be going to the Patreon to support the Patreon and keep that going. So there's so much incredibleness on this channel. I'm so grateful to be welcomed onto this channel. I'm very excited about the growth of this channel, the development of this channel, and everything that that Black Power Media is doing. So and remember to click the likes and everything, because that engagement, including you talking on here, helps us to tell the algorithm that that you want to see more of this, right? And I hope you do. And then also to share this with folks, like let folks know more about Black Power Media. Everybody complains about we don't have enough positive images of Black people. Tell them to come over to Black Power Media and check it out. And there's lots of programming over here that's exciting, that's interesting, that's informative, and you ain't gotta deal with fake news. You can come on over here and have some fun, get your news, have some laughs, and connect with a really dope community. So just appreciate everyone for listening and tuning in. And so y'all know it's Monday night. So guess what everybody gonna do tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock? From 8 until 10, y'all gonna be listening to the morning show. And let your comrades know, like, check out the morning show. It's a lot of fun over there, and that's the news that's better for your media diet. So we'll see y'all over here tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, Black Power Media Morning Show. And this has been Beyond Breaking Barriers. I'm going to put on my little outro to take us out. And I'm going to see y'all here at 8 p.m. next Monday. Oh, and before I go, this is World Water Week. So happy World Water Week. And Thursday is World Water Day. So happy World Water Week and happy World Water Day. Shouts out to having fresh, clean, affordable water. And Flint's not fixed. Peace.